The Moonies, the Unification Church, are an organization that broke people's trust in humanity on purpose as adults. I was born and raised in the organization that paid a bribe to make sure that book was written in the way that they wanted that book to be written. I have yet to see anybody bring a level of intensity that I feel like is more than required to stand up for people who are being blatantly violated. Hey, welcome to My Cult Story Part 1. Please refer to me as Faith Yoon, all lowercase. Try to put the 2 dots over the U where you can. Faith is my real legal first name. Yoon is the correct way to pronounce my real legal middle name. I am not in the witness protection program. I would just prefer to go by Faith Yoon whenever I'm talking about culty things, just because. Thank you. I had also hoped to make this one very long video, but that is not physically possible for me right now. I mean, I am technically legally disabled. I have chosen not to apply for disability services anymore. I've applied several times and I would have to hire a lawyer and go to court, and I'm tired of being gaslit and having to fight for my own lived experience. Because of my adverse childhood experiences and also because of a handful of pretty intensely traumatic situations that I found myself in trying to extricate myself from the Moonies and start life over, I have a very sensitive nervous system. I have a really hard time regulating my emotions. I have a really hard time planning ahead, remembering appointments, like using short-term memory, initiating tasks, being able to make decisions with confidence. And at this point, it is pretty much impossible for any professional to confidently say whether that is a neurodevelopmental disorder I was born with, or whether adverse childhood experiences and trauma, like repeated complex trauma, are to blame for that. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter because I'm still who I am. I'm still where I am, right? In terms of the struggles that I face every day. So I have learned over the past couple days that I am not going to be able to sit down for more than, I don't know, an hour tops talking about my cult story at one time. If you filmed a YouTube video before, you know that you film for a lot longer than what people actually end up seeing on their screen. And instead of using Premiere Pro or something like that, I'm gonna be using a program that incorporates a lot of AI to help me with a lot of tasks automatically, so that cutting out really long pauses and fixing words that I might mess up is a lot faster and easier for me. If I have a hard time making eye contact with the camera, if I stutter as well, it's not because I don't want to talk about what I'm talking about or because I'm not sure of what I'm talking about. It's because I have a hard time using my own nervous system. I skip words as I'm talking. I skip words as I'm writing. And that again is like evidence of a pretty profound neurological disorder that I am going to be coping with and using accommodations to help me with for the rest of my life. And that's not a tragedy. That's not something to apologize to me for or give me sympathy for. It just is what it is. So yeah, I'm saying all of this loudly and proudly, even if it seems like too much information all at once, like too much personal information, because I remember exactly who I was when I was scouring the internet for help. I remember feeling trapped and unsafe and unwelcome in my own home, to the point where home didn't even feel like an appropriate word. Growing up in the Unification Church, being born and raised in the Moonies, my family struggled to stay consistently housed. We were never sleeping on the street or anything, but I've learned that being unhoused or housing unstable is a spectrum. And if your family or you do not know how you're gonna pay rent, if you do not know where you're gonna live, or if you are consistently getting evicted and change addresses a lot, that is considered part of the housing instability spectrum. When I first started Googling people who had escaped cults, when I started looking up the word cult, because I finally started to question whether or not they were actually very good for me, I remember intense comfort and release when I found people who were brave enough to get out here on the internet, look a camera in the face and spill the beans. Just very organically, very authentically give details that a lot of people are not willing or able to give to a complete stranger. 22 is when I got out, but it has taken me 10 years of relapsing and getting drawn back into unhealthy relationships with Moonies, being love bombed and convinced to spend more time with people who do not have my best interest in mind. It took me 10 years of trying to seek out help while not trusting therapy at all to finally understand that there is nothing cursed about me. There is nothing inherently broken about me, even with the neurological disorder I just described. I don't feel like damaged goods. I don't feel unlovable. I don't feel excluded from humanity. I don't feel any different from any other outsider. However, I do still feel sometimes as though old feelings and emotions, old patterns of thought are still way too easy to access for comfort. Old vocabulary words, just really sneaky, like overwhelming emotional states, feeling like maybe I am worthless. Like maybe I should just not be alive anymore. Maybe no one on earth can relate to what I've been through except other people who are actually there, and I should call them and we should talk about Moony things. Emotions and thoughts are very intertwined. They trigger each other, like emotional states of being kick up different thoughts, and also different thoughts or phrases from other people will reawaken other emotions. And it can feel really scary to live in my own head sometimes. In the past 10 years, I have been aggressively, almost for the sake of my own safety and for the sake of having a purpose, when leaving a group like the Moonies feels like losing my purpose, I have been aggressively researching the historical facts that I can find about Reverend Moon and the origins of the Unification Church, the names of the people who helped him get to where he was when he died at the ripe old age of 94 in a private hospital, in a private palace in South Korea that he paid for with my family's blood, sweat, and tears, with all of the Unification Church members' blood, sweat, and tears. People died fundraising for Reverend Moon. And it's very important to me now in 2024, watching this genocide in Palestine happen, knowing that AIPAC is a lobbying group that is silencing politicians who could do their job and stop this genocide, knowing that AIPAC has given money to the Moon organization, knowing that the Moon organization at one point shifted gears and consistently gives US politicians money. It is very important to me to talk about this right now. I feel as though I have been choking down a lot of poison. I was the de facto therapist and shoulder to cry on for a whole bunch of people, not just like in my biological family, but also in my Portland Family Church area, and honestly at other workshops and on other programs that I was a part of while I was in the Moonies. I've always been the person who just doesn't reveal her true feelings and tries to keep a straight face whenever possible. And that was really traumatizing for me. I've since learned that even just like witnessing or being told very passionately by someone about the trauma that they've been through, that counts as an adverse childhood experience. That's a traumatic experience for anybody and their nervous system. Feeling as though I've been trusted with information, as though someone's suffering is my fault, as though I have a responsibility for other people's very intense, very painful feelings, but then also feeling as though no matter what I do, I'm always going to fall short. That has felt like a disease eating me on the inside. I understand this might be the first time that you're seeing me or meeting me. Hi. But I am not new to this, I'm true to this. And just to recap real quick, the very first time I went on my personal Facebook page and I wrote out a composed, thought out message that spoke negatively and critically about the Unification Church and about Reverend Moon with strong language and explicatives, like curse words, oh my God. The backlash was real. And also the help and the kindness and the genuine compassion and empathy that non-Moonies, that outsiders gave to me, changed my life forever. It was right around late 2016, early 2017, when it became very clear that Donald Trump was going to win the election. I was living in Portland, Oregon, and there were protests in the street that I participated in. We were tear gassed by police. Black Lives Matter and Don't Shoot Portland rallies were happening all over. And it was just a very heated time. And I became very heated. When I say heated, I mean just emotionally reactive, emotionally invested. When I saw people that I knew in person from the East Coast saying things that I never thought I would see them say, but also saying things that I knew they would not say if I had been more honest about what I had gone through in my childhood. So that Facebook post I wrote in, I think, late 2016. I honestly can't remember, and I've deleted Facebook since then. I cannot recover my account because I left it deactivated for so long. It's all just been cleared and I don't miss it. But I wrote a Facebook post talking about, actually, yeah, the United States is not perfect. The United States is shockingly similar to Muslim countries in the Middle East. I am a white girl with blue eyes who was raised in what everyone seems to believe was a Christian organization, and I was required to sit on opposite sides of the room as men. I was required to live by a lot of the same laws that people believe only really apply to Muslims. I was very much pressured and groomed from birth to accept an arranged marriage. It was very strongly implied, but then also stated, like point blank, if you say no to your arranged marriage, you're a lesser person, you're a wimp, you're a loser, you're disgracing your family, you're going to be even less eligible when you try again. So that is coercion. That is being required to make a decision like under duress, like with very harsh consequences as a child. And so I composed a Facebook post trying to say all of that, trying to say, like, you haven't been paying attention to what's been going on in your own community, people. And the response was wild. People who had been following me on Facebook and had met me in person a lot in the Mooney community, who never usually bothered to speak to me or check in with me about anything at all, suddenly had so much to say about me, and it was not kind or compassionate. And other people who were within my friend group network on Facebook who had never heard of the Unification Church were seeing this post because it was getting so much traction and so much engagement. So non-Moonies who had never met me started commenting like, hey, would you mind making this public so I can reshare it? And within a matter of hours, it was the most viral post I had ever posted on Facebook. I was getting comments from people I had never met before who did not live in Oregon, and I got a phone call and an email from a documentary production company who wanted to interview me to be on a show about cults potentially. And what's crazy is, in between phone calls with my then childhood best friend speaking very strongly to me about how I was a bad, awful person for showing so much rage towards my true family, even though she claimed to not be in the church anymore, right? In between phone calls of people saying that it was embarrassing, that I didn't know what I was talking about, that I had no right to say anything, I was being shown like what to me seemed like a truly irrational amount of kindness from TV producers. Literally the people that the alt-right and that the Moon organization told me were evil. Also, by the way, in case you haven't noticed, don't really care if you hate the term Moonies. Still gonna use it because it's more accurate, and because Unification Church is like the 11th, 12th, 100th name for the Moonies that they have decided to use. It just shocked me that all of the people that the Moonies had always told me were supposed to be pure evil, they were showing me genuine mirroring, genuine concern, and then also allowing me to be left alone. The people I was talking to were like horrified on my behalf because of my body language. They were better at reading my body language than my own family members. And not only were they reading my body language and reflecting it back to me and showing me that they understood my body language, they were changing their behavior. They were letting go of what they wanted from me based on my body language and saying, because I care about you, because I care about your well-being and your happiness, I am not going to ask you for what I want from you. I am going to let you take space to be sad and to be angry, because that is clearly what you need right now. And you deserve to have privacy while you feel your feelings, instead of being trotted out on TV for other people to look at you and analyze you. And that juxtaposition, that blatant contradiction in what I didn't even realize I still believed to be true from my upbringing, that sent me into a 3-day long panic attack that ended with me being in the ER. What I want people to gain from this playlist, from my cult story, trying to truly escape what feels like a sand pit, like a vacuum of empathyless, endless talking points that encourage narcissism, that encourage neuroses. What I want you to get from this playlist is validation. If you have been face to face with people who, even though they claim to love you and claim to know what's best for you, apparently couldn't give two shits about your very obvious body language, your very obvious needs. Whether you say it out loud, write it down, sing it to them. It is a very painful experience being gaslit. I understand that gaslighting has become extremely overused and overexposed in the zeitgeist right now, on the internet, everywhere. Gaslighting comes from a play about a man who marries a woman for her money and then isolates her, moves her across an ocean from everyone she knows, and then slowly moves things around the house and lies to her face and refuses to acknowledge her reality, with the specific intention of sending her off the deep end to the point where she does not trust her senses anymore, and he can institutionalize her and take all of her money for himself. That's where the word gaslighting comes from. To be blunt, gaslighting is too cute and soft a phrase for what the experience of being gaslit feels like. When someone looks you in the face and says, I love you, I'm trying to help you out, but you can't trust any of your senses. I don't care how you think or feel, and I am not going to believe anything you say, no matter how urgently you ask me to believe it. That is abusive. That is verbal violence. I don't know how else to explain that to you. Words very much do matter. Words impact the chemicals in your brain and in your gut and in your body. For those of us extremely pale, melanin deficient people who are part of the British diaspora, there's a really famous study from World War II that has now become an anecdote. In World War II, when London and other major cities were getting relentlessly bombed, British children were sent out to the countryside in droves, separated from their families, and sent out to orphanages oftentimes. If they had relatives in the countryside, great. For people who did not know anyone in the countryside, or for children whose families had already been killed in bombings, these British children were sent out by the truckload, and they were sent to convents and sent to orphanages. And something that the scientific community discovered on accident from these orphanages was that the human body needs so much more than just oxygen, food, water, shelter, and warmth. Newborn babies were dying of some bizarre unknown cause because they were not getting held, they were not getting enough eye contact, they were not being acknowledged with words and sounds and physical touch. Here in the United States, in the medical community, when a child is physically, measurably stunted because they don't have that emotional mirroring, they don't have that touch, they don't have that emotional eye contact and validation. They call that failure to thrive, especially in the first 7 years of a human being's life. When your skull is still fusing together, your brain is moving the fastest it will ever move. You can say all the prayers, buy all the crystals, do all the Wiccan rituals, do all the Hare Krishnas, do all the rosaries, I don't care, pick your poison, pick your opiate, pick your beloved, cherished, beautiful religion, okay? It really doesn't matter if the first 7 years of your biological life are messed up. You are biologically going to be in the habit of not trusting other human beings and not believing that other human beings can help you in any way. The Moonies, the Unification Church, are an organization that broke people's trust in humanity on purpose as adults. The Unification Church, especially when they expanded to the United States with the intention of recruiting as many people as possible, they used sales tactics, emotional pressure, emotional friction, created logistical obstacles to trap people in physical locations who otherwise would have left. And they designed workshops that classically conditioned and groomed people to stop trusting their own biological family members, stop trusting their own thoughts and their own critical thinking skills, and develop a very unhealthy enmeshed attachment to the idea of Reverend Moon and to the authority figures already within the church that they lied and said wasn't a church for the first few phases of that recruiting process. And I can say that with 100% confidence into this camera because that is my parents' lived reality, because there have already been multiple books written about it by ex-Moonies and non-Moonies who witnessed their own family members transform into different people who acted like they didn't even know their own biological family. And I am absolutely done arguing as to whether or not that occurred, because it absolutely did. I fully acknowledge that recruiting method did not work 100% of the time, but it is irrational and reckless to try to put a number onto how many people it worked on and how many people it didn't, because nobody has any accurate records for any of these workshops. The Moonies and other predatory cultic organizations target people who are vulnerable. And in the case of the Moonies, in the 60s and 70s, that period where they were very aggressively recruiting, there were no cell phones, there was no internet, there were a fraction of the number of cameras as there are now anywhere. It was very hard for people to get the word out as to where they were at any given moment, let alone what they were experiencing. So there are no accurate records as to how many people the Moonies successfully recruited versus how many people did not get coerced into joining the Moonies and were able to walk away as if it was not a big deal. If you look back at the other YouTube videos that I've been publishing here, I just want to let you know, I filmed every single one of those on an iPhone SE, and they were filmed outside because I was living at a Long Beach Rescue Mission, which is a domestic violence shelter. And I was living there because I filed a restraining order against my biological father. He was, at the time, and I guess will always be, an alcoholic who had been court ordered to go to AA multiple times and continue to relapse. He collects guns and often threatens people with them verbally and sometimes visually, does not listen to the word no. He consistently has never respected my physical space. And after I moved back home and realized that my parents were never going to respect me as an adult, they were never going to give me autonomy no matter what they promised over the phone, and I got my own job and I got my own address, I made the mistake of trying to give my dad another chance because I felt bad for him. I wanted to believe that I could trust him to help me with logistical things like fixing my car that he helped me buy off Craigslist when it constantly was breaking down. But he would be given an inch and would take a mile, and I said enough is enough. I filed a restraining order, and when he and my mom decided to team up together and use my brother and my relatives to triangulate against me. And when it was clear I was just a source of entertainment for everyone, I decided, no, I'm not gonna show up in court to continue going back and forth about this like I have been my whole life. I'm just gonna move in with people I know through a Mooney Facebook page in Southern California. And those people in Southern California literally stole my property from me. I was not the best version of myself when I lived with them, but I don't understand how the Unification Church can claim to be a worthwhile organization and also treat people so badly that they beat their own family members, that they fall into substance abuse because they join the church. I don't understand how any sane, rational person can try to argue that the Unification Church has had any kind of a truly positive impact on the communities that they participate in. Because I was there, and I have seen how Unification Church members, especially the very traumatized first generation, they are often in need of a lot of help from public resources in their community. And there's no shame in that. I'm just saying, if you're an organization that claims to produce people who are better than everyone else, I realize I'm literally just a girl and I'm like really bad at math, but the math ain't mathin'. I probably could have just left well enough alone and not made any videos, but immediately before uploading those videos, the pandemic hit and I lost my job. I was no longer able to afford housing. My younger sister was so desperate to get out of our nuclear family home that she just showed up at my door, unable to pay rent, and decided she was gonna live with me or be homeless. I was like, okay, bet. Let me make some phone calls and see if we can get into this domestic violence shelter. Immediately before that happened, right? I got a phone call saying that the younger sister of someone I knew in the Unification Church had just jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and killed herself. The very next summer, a Jacob's child, a man whose mother joined the Unification Church after he was born, this man who watched the Unification Church financially devastate his family and transform his mom into someone he didn't recognize at all, he allegedly built a handgun in Japan where handguns are illegal and allegedly assassinated former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. But sure, go ahead. Try to leave a comment, try to tell me or anyone else that the Unification Church is a brilliant organization that positively contributes to society. I mean, that's been the argument, right? That just because people speak for spiritual topics, just because people provide spiritual services, they are somehow magically without fault and cannot be spoken critically of for any reason in any way. I don't buy that. I don't. And as much as I probably would like to put this black hole of an organization behind me, wealthy figures in the United States who identify with alt-right causes and throw lots of money at alt-right causes to change legislation in America, they also don't want to leave the Moonies behind. They also have been working with the Moonies to spread misinformation through the Washington Times and every other organization that the Unification Church has had its hands in. The Unification Church and the Moon estate, the Moon family, are a pretty well-known money laundering family for the alt-right, for fascists, starting in World War II. And I have not been able to let this go or leave it behind or stop talking about it because, hello, no one can. Look at where we are. I'm not the only one who saw January 6th happen. And guess who was on TV on January 6th? Guess who I saw on my TV screen? The son of Reverend Moon. What would you do? What would you have me do? And honestly, my only regret is that it's taken me this long to talk about it. There are quite a few reasons I haven't been able to tell my cult story up to this point. One of the key reasons being my thoughts have often felt like razor blades. I have had to learn for the first time how to be really kind to myself and show myself grace and compassion when I make the smallest of mistakes or when I even think rude things about other people who have absolutely violated me. Like, for some reason, I can allow other people to behave so foul to me and to people I care about, but as soon as I even think something mean or rude, my thoughts become razor blades and I can't say it out loud, or at least I never used to be able to. I had no idea until very recently that there can be measurable, treatable, and extremely valid biological reasons for not being able to get up and do things that I know I need and want to do. I was told that if I don't have the results that other people want me to have, it's entirely my fault. I'm just a flawed, worthless, broken, lazy person. And that is not only within the Unification Church, but also within the biological relatives I tried to maintain relationships with on my dad's side of the family who were raised Seventh-day Adventist. That is still an active practicing religion in this United States, founded originally as a bunch of cults, if you'll remember in history class. The United States were originally a bunch of cranky white people who said, I don't want to be part of the Church of England anymore. I want to be left alone to rape my daughter and to divulge completely different versions of the Bible as much as I want without anyone else holding me accountable. And even when people who had very strong and opposing beliefs about the same Bibles or about which version of the Bible was more accurate, even when they were given space and time and land to do whatever they wanted in the privacy of their own farms, compounds, they were still killing each other all the time over those discrepancies, right? And that's why we needed different colonies. I'm here to persuade you of the idea that people with different religions need to be able to criticize religions that are actively harming people. I'm here to persuade people that religion, US-based religions, Christian religions, can cause harm and do cause harm. The Unification Church has and is being paid for by Zionists, laundering money for fascists, bribing US politicians to change policies. I'm tired of being told that I can't say things that hurt the feelings of people who are paying for a genocide and excusing genocide. I won't do it. So besides constantly being updated about the Unification Church and the harm that it inflicts on people, besides finally getting access to trauma therapy, besides finally being able to surround myself with people who validate my reality and care about me saying what I need to say, whether or not they agree with me. I'm finally speaking up now and making this series of videos because I'm tired of so much blatant misinformation, flat out lies about the group that I grew up in, that I used to advocate so hard for. I literally have Reverend Moon's 12-gate symbol tattooed between my shoulder blades. I jumped out of a plane with Reverend Moon's names written on my arms and had someone take a photo of it. I was there, and I don't appreciate finally making it to college as a returning adult student and seeing a book that I know for a fact the Unification Church paid for. The Making of a Moonie by sociologist Eileen Barker is the result of a bribe. The Unification Church paid Eileen Barker $10,000. And if you look up that book on Goodreads, there are some valid criticisms from students who have been required to read this book as part of their school curriculum, where they point out, hey, for a book that's supposed to be a logical conclusion and a study that comes from interviewing a bunch of Moonies, there are shockingly few quotes from a very small number of Moonies. I don't understand how many people were actually in this study. It's just a collection of personal essays from Eileen Barker. Why is that? It's because the Moonies paid her to say what they wanted her to say. And she has been called out on it, and she doesn't care. And it is still part of school curriculums all around the United States and in the UK when people talk about the Unification Church. As a matter of fact, in the book Cultish, they quote Eileen Barker. Anytime the discussion of religion versus cults as to whether cults are actually harmful or not, people quote Eileen Barker and the book The Making of a Moonie. And I was born and raised in the organization that paid a bribe to make sure that book was written in the way that they wanted that book to be written. How are you going to look me in the face and tell me that I have to sign up for student loans with predatory interest rates on campuses that are currently in shambles because of a genocide, and say, oh, by the way, part of your required reading is a piece of propaganda that your human trafficking organization paid for? That'll be $400, thank you. No. What doesn't make any sense to me is that Steve Hassan is a well-known public speaker and author and cult deprogrammer at this point. Second-generation Moonies have their own opinions about how kind of predatory Steve Hassan's prices are, but that's another discussion for another day. Steve Hassan has gone on the record on multiple podcasts. He's given multiple TED Talks and said that the moment that broke his faith, the thing that broke his belief in Reverend Moon as a dude with superpowers, was seeing Reverend Moon lie in public about how he loves Christians, when behind the scenes, Reverend Moon frequently talked about how much he hated Christians and how the Moonies were going to conquer Christians in the United States. And yet somehow in every single piece of literature, in every documentary I've ever seen about the Moonies and Reverend Moon, apparently the Moonies are a Christian organization. How does that make sense? Why was I taught to hate Christians in an organization that everybody else seems to think is based on Christianity and supports Christianity? That's what I would like to know. Or more accurately, that's what I'm here to set straight. And finally, I want to talk about cognitive liberty. Cognitive liberty is the right to mental self-determination. It's the freedom of an individual to control their own mental processes, cognition, and consciousness. It has been argued to be both an extension of and the principle underlying the right to freedom of thought. Cognitive liberty is not a recognized right in any international human rights treaties, but has gained a limited level of recognition in the United States. and is argued to be the principle underlying a number of recognized rights. Richard Glenn Boir, sorry if I'm pronouncing that last name wrong, of the Center for Cognitive Liberty and Ethics, filed a brief with the US Supreme Court regarding cognitive liberty. It's originally been presented as what might need to be a new human right to protect people from forceful administration or non-consensual administration of psychotic drugs. But it also is being spoken about a lot in the tech community by the same people who created a documentary about how potentially manipulative and harmful social media can be because of how physically addicting it is. In 2020, there was a documentary called The Social Dilemma, created by experts in Silicon Valley, people who have degrees in brain science, to make apps as addicting to the pleasure centers in your brain as any other sort of slot machine. And The Social Dilemma was created to be a warning to everybody, to be conscious of what you're consuming and how often you're on social media, and also to let people know that there are plenty of bad actors, right? People who don't care about the safety of children, people who don't care about your mental health, who are more than willing to create fake companies, harmful products, and promote really harmful messaging on every type of app.
You believe you're thinking freely. Your social network shows everyone's agreeing with you. So again, how would you know if you were under undue influence? And how could we regain sovereignty over our minds? I'm Tristan Harris. I'm Asa Raskin. And this is Your Undivided Attention, the podcast from the Center for Humane Technology. Our guest today is Dr. Stephen Hassan, an expert in undue influence, brainwashing, and unethical hypnosis. Dr. Hassan is the founder of the Freedom of Mind Resource Center, a coaching, consulting, and training organization dedicated to helping people think clearly and freely consider how they want to live their lives. Dr. Hassan himself was a member of a cult. For over 2 years, he was part of the Unification Church, also known as the Moonies, which was developed in the 1950s in Korea by Reverend Sun Myung Moon.
The tactics used to recruit people into harmful cults are shockingly similar to the tactics that the algorithms on social media use to keep you coming back to your device, no matter how miserable you become, no matter how much your thoughts begin to change, no matter how much your image of your own body begins to change, for the worse. Those same experts were recently invited to the White House to talk about whether or not people like Elon Musk, whether or not the owners of these platforms like Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram have any obligation whatsoever to lose profit in order to keep us safe, in control of our own cognitive liberty. My cult story is not a cry for help. This is not me just baselessly seeking attention because I thrive off of attention. Technically speaking, doesn't every upright mammal need attention to survive? Any discussion about the Unification Church is also a discussion about cognitive liberty. And I just hope that me telling my cult story can validate people who feel like they're going absolutely insane because they don't recognize themselves, they don't recognize their family members, their loved ones, they don't understand why members of their own communities could be okay with having no empathy for specific groups of people for some reason. It's a very crazy-making thing to witness. And I'm very much here to advocate for cognitive liberty as an inalienable, how do I say that? An unalienable, I went to community college, an unalienable human right that should be recognized by every international community. In the same way that one would hope genocide and war crimes would be recognized by the international community as, I don't know, bad things that people should be immediately arrested for. But here we are. I'm very hot and sweaty now. Not in a good way. This is what heated means. I've been holding an ice pack this whole time and everything. Listen, in order to get this far in life and in order to recover from, honestly, like really intense thoughts all the time, something that has been important for me to get in the habit of doing is practicing gratitude and also focusing on and looking for the good in life and the good in people. So I do also want to take some time to acknowledge that I don't think my parents would have made it if they hadn't had some sort of community with free food and lots of smiles, lots of singing, lots of purpose, right? Lots of idealism. And ultimately, whether or not everyone can agree on which organizations are cults and whether or not people are willing to use the term cult in a pejorative way. The thing that successful communities and groups have in common when they invite people in is this sense of idealism. Idealism and hope in the future is a really powerful thing, and it's not fun to come on the internet and basically try to take people's hope and idealism away. I'm not trying to break anyone's reason for living. I'm not trying to rob anyone of anything. I'm here because I still have so much intense love and affection, honestly, for people that I cannot ever speak to again for the sake of my own physical safety and like emotional health. I still have so much love and compassion for people who I already know have blocked me on everything, who are going to be lurking and watching this, seething with rage, ready to take notes and try to tear me down. I'm not here to incite violence. I'm not here to make people feel awful just to feel powerful over other people. That doesn't make me feel good. I'm not here to try to become an abusive or powerful person out of spite because I was abused. I just want to advocate for my own inner child and for the actual literal children who have messaged me privately and said, hey, I feel really trapped and I don't know what to do because my own parents are very unpleasant to be around. They don't listen to me. They treat me very badly, even though I love them and I'm grateful for them and I don't want to be a bad person by saying bad things about them. It would be so much easier, wouldn't it, if the people we loved were either very clearly evil or all the way lovable and good. That's the conflict, isn't it? So I just want to be very clear that I'm also here to try to present solutions. I don't need everyone to agree with me wholeheartedly. And I understand that throughout this video, I've been speaking very harshly about Christianity in particular, while also still having Christian friends. In my lowest moments and my scariest moments, I still compulsively, just as like a knee-jerk reaction, say the phrase Hananim Abuji, which means Heavenly Father in Korean. I'm not here to take anyone's source of strength away from them. I'm not here to disrespect anybody's culture. But I have yet to see anybody bring a level of intensity that I feel like is more than required to stand up for people who are being blatantly violated by people who are blinded by their own fervor. This is all the talking about this I'm going to do today. I've already gone for a walk. I've been taking steps to take care of myself. Please take steps to take care of yourself. I hope you feel good. I hope you feel grateful. I hope you feel happy to be alive. And if you don't, it's okay to feel your feelings. Have a good day. Thank you.